Howdy folks, welcome back to WAC. Today I'm going to be putting all of the seasonal units for Supremacy World War III, aka Conflict of Nations, onto a tier list. Currently we are on Season 17, so it's been a little while since I've done one of these, and some stats have changed over time. So we're going to go from oldest to newest, and we are going to see where everything lands on this tier list. As you can see, I don't have an F tier, and that's because, well, these are elite units, so none of them are really going to be that bad. So yeah, let's see where everything lands. Alright, so first off, we have the elite main battle tank. Now this thing is absolutely killer. Especially in the early game, this thing just like steamrolls everything. It still is good in the late game. It's going to be the strongest tank you're going to be able to make. And you know, it's crazy. This thing actually has missile defense, which actually is historical. There are such things as trophy systems that can protect from like tow missiles and stuff like that. But in Conflict of Nations, that translates to cruise missile protection. So if you have like 5 of these in a stack, having like 5 missile defense just for free, pretty sweet, considering that missiles are one of the biggest counters to armored vehicles. But yeah, this thing can no longer scout like it used to, so I'm going to be keeping that in mind. But considering at the max level it has 80 hit points, it does have an army boost, not a very big one, but it still does have one. Honestly, this thing is still S tier. It's absolutely nuts. It has, you know, some anti-air protection against helicopters and drones as well, which is something else to consider. But yeah, no, it's been solid. It's not quite as good as it used to be, but I'm still gonna say it's S tier. Alrighty folks, well, as you may be able to tell, this isn't really a scripted video. I'm just kind of shooting by the hip here, giving you my unfiltered opinion. So let's move on to the second item on the list, the elite attack helicopter. Now, at the early stages, honestly, it's not that great. Sure, it's better than, you know, your standard attack helicopter, but once you hit maximum level, this thing gets crazy. It becomes stealth and it can ignore entrenchment. So those two things, wow, it's really fantastic. It's not going to be better than, say, if you just go for stealth strike fighters, which is available for everyone to use. But yeah, overall, it's a decent unit, absolutely crazy at maximum level, but not like super OP. So yeah, I would probably say, I'm not going to give it S. I'm going to have to go with A tier for this one. Okay, so next up we have the Elite AIP Submarine. What this basically is, it's a high-powered coastal submarine. So it's going to be great for protecting choke points and especially for assassinating ships that are parked in harbors. Now, at the max level, this vessel actually has no sonar signature. Now, what this means is even destroyers and subs, you can stay hidden from as long as you don't intersect their path or attack them. So if you're a high-skilled player, you know how to do hit and run tactics, you're going to be able to absolutely kill with this thing. However, you know, if you have a day job, you're not on the game all the time, you kind of waypoint stuff to capture stuff, I probably wouldn't go for this because as soon as it's spotted, it's going to be pretty vulnerable. But for the active player, I would say S tier. For most people, I would say D tier. So we're just gonna split the difference and go C. Okay, let's take a gander at the Elite Railgun. Now, this thing is pretty absurd. It's in the early game, you know, it's basically just artillery, but at the max level, it has some absolutely fantastic anti-air capabilities, anti-drone capabilities, and anti-missile capabilities. It can hit ships just as hard as it can hit armor, which is pretty freaking hard. And yeah, it's basically really easy to use. Most people are gonna have a great time in it. If you encounter a player that has high-level mobile artillery or high-level rocket artillery, you are going to get outranged. So this unit isn't just a trump card. It doesn't beat everything, but it's good against most things. Considering how easy it is to use, I'm going to put this in S tier. Next up, we have the Elite Bomber. Now, this thing is absolutely crazy when you use it in the Apocalypse game modes. You already have those nuclear warheads at the start of the game, so you research ballistic missiles, and instead of launching nuclear-tipped cruise missiles from bombers like most people, with this you can launch nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles, and you can actually get them fairly quickly. Yeah, absolutely fantastic, super long range, and they're going to be a lot more flexible than, you know, your standard ballistic missile launchers. For bombing, I typically don't like to use them for that. They do an exceptional job. They do a lot of building damage if that's what you're looking for. As a bomber itself, I would say the stealth bomber is way better, but if you're going to be going for a heavy missile loadout in your playthrough, then this thing can absolutely clean house. Definitely not going to be S tier, and at the same time, I don't think I would put it in B tier. Makes for a good bomber, and if you want to go for heavy missiles, then it's even better. So yeah, I'm just going to say A tier, because a lot of people do play the Apocalypse game mode, and a lot of people have access to, missiles in games like that. So sticking with A tier, and let's move on. Alrighty, our next contender is the Elite UGV. Now, not very many people use this unit, including myself, but the few times that I have used it, I've had great success. Even at the lowest level, it can scout, which is great if you don't have any scouting units in your stacks. And at the max level, you get radar, can reveal ground stealth, ignore entrenchment, and it has a small army boost. Not to mention, when it's in urban and suburban areas, it gets an extra 25% attack and defense. Yeah, especially against soft, this thing is absolutely fantastic. I can't give it S tier just because I haven't used it very much, and I don't think I've ever seen anyone else use it. So I'm just gonna give it A tier because I know it's good, I like it, and that's where it's gonna stay. Okay, so next up we have the Elite Loitering Munition. Now, these are drones that once deployed are stationary and patrol a certain radius. Once they expire, they drop to the ground, do nothing, don't count against your kill to death ratio. Once an enemy enters that patrol circle, they engage, and they do quite a bit of damage actually, especially if they don't have any drone defense, and a lot of units do not have good drone defense. Now, against ships, wow. These do a lot of damage at the max level, 45, and they have 20 hit points, so yeah, they could even do some damage against frigates if they're low level or if they don't have very many of them. But against destroyers and cruisers especially, these are going to be fantastic. And a lot of different units can deploy this. Now, I don't use them very often, and the main reason was every time I did use them, people would just use low level air superiority fighters to take them out super easily. So that's kind of the biggest counter, is going to be fixed wing aircraft. But if you have someone who doesn't have good air coverage, doesn't have drone defense, then these things can be absolutely killer. But considering how situational they are, I'm probably just going to stick with keeping them in B tier because they are a great tool, and honestly, I should try to be using these more. Next up is everyone's favorite, the Elite Attack Aircraft. Now, what this thing basically does is it trades more damage against soft, hard targets, and helicopters for less attack against fixed wing aircraft. If a fixed wing stack gets a hold of this thing, it's going to get absolutely shredded. It does have a little bit more health versus normal strike fighters, which is nice, but in the past, you didn't need a level 3 airbase to mobilize these things at the first level. And that's where the problem really was in the early game. A lot of people were just making these in the early game and absolutely wrecking. That's not really the case anymore. So I'm kind of glad that the team at Twin Harbors, formerly Dorado and Bitro, I'm glad they fixed it. Now it's quite a bit more balanced actually. It's still a good unit. It's going to do a lot of damage, but I wouldn't necessarily call it OP because it does have trade-offs. So wow, am I going to put it in B tier? Am I actually going to do that? You know what? Considering it can be launched from carriers, I'm going to put it up in A tier. Also, ignoring entrenchment is pretty freaking fantastic. Even if you got level 5 bunkers, this thing doesn't care somehow. So yeah, I'm gonna put it in A tier. It's still a solid unit. Okay, now let's take a look at the Elite Frigate. So this ship, it's pretty decent, not amazing. Basically, it's horrible at bombarding, not good against ships, great against submarines, and anti-air, it's comparable to the standard frigate's anti-air, just with some numbers shifted around. At the max level, this thing does have 125 radar range, which is absolutely fantastic, being able to see beyond your shooting range. Also, of course, the main shtick with this ship is that it can carry helicopters. It can't carry very many of them, but that honestly doesn't really matter. You'll be able to carry enough helicopters for killing troops in a coastal city, or for ASW helicopters just to bolster your naval power. Overall, pretty good, not amazing. I think it's like the definition of a B tier elite unit. So, alrighty, now let's take a look at the elite special forces. Now, the main focus with this unit is that they focus heavily on defense and not so much offense. Also, they do have the ability to have offensive anti-air, which can lead to some very interesting interactions. Now, when it comes to this being a defensive unit, I feel like that's honestly not very helpful for a special forces unit. Special forces is where you're going to want to go into enemy territory, kill grounded aircraft, and do all kinds of fun stuff like that. Defensive attacks are only applied when you're in friendly territory. So it's going to be if you're on the back foot, or if you happen to be really good at switch invading and making people target a province where you have these guys stationed. That could be really valuable, but it's kind of like an advanced tactic that most people just don't bother with. The anti-air, however, is what I really like about this. The scenarios that stealth anti-air can lead to are pretty interesting. You can literally go next to an enemy airfield and sit there, and as they're patrolling or taking off or landing, as long as you're not at the center of wherever that airfield or airbase is, you can literally just kill aircraft for free. It's absolutely fantastic, super funny, but if they catch you, not so funny. And honestly, with them not being able to air assault and with the other differences, they do not at all pair well with normal special forces. You want to keep these guys in their own separated stacks. Also, because they have a bow, I'm going to put them in D tier. I mean, who the frick are these guys, like Hawkeye or something? Like, what? But yeah, considering all these factors, I think I'm gonna have to put them in D tier because having stealth units in your own territory just isn't nearly as useful as having them in enemy territory. And you only get the defensive attack if they attack you on your home territory, so that's just how it is. I'm gonna have to put this in D tier. One of the newer additions to the game is the Elite Satellite. Now, this used to be kind of like absolutely busted, but since it's been balanced, it's still very good. However, it is no longer OP. So what this does is at the first and second level, it's basically a UAV with really high view range that doesn't need to refuel. So it's good for tracking troop movements and formulating your own offensive plans. At the max level, however, this can scout ground targets and reveal stealth of ground targets. Yeah, it's very, very useful. You only get a few of them, so it's kind of hard to pick and choose where exactly to have them stationed, but they're incredibly useful. If you're going for ballistic missiles, it's a no-brainer. Definitely get satellites. They're kind of expensive, and they do take rare materials upkeep, which is kind of crazy. But if you just annex a rare material city, then you're basically good to go. Now, a couple counters to this. If it sits right over some anti-air that can reveal air stealth, it's going to get shot down. But most satellite players aren't going to fall for that because of the ridiculously high view range. The main way to counter this is to just destroy the airfield that it was made at. It's pretty easy to spot. They're at least going to be a level 4 airbase, and if you just Zerg rush it, destroy it, any satellites that were made out of that airbase are going to crash. It's kind of weird, but I think it's needed for balancing. And these satellites cannot go to different airfields once they are deployed. So that is a pretty solid tactic. Also, stealth air superiority fighters can see these things. So that's another way you can counter the satellite. So yeah, in the past, I definitely would have put this in S tier. It's kind of expensive to upkeep, but it's not B tier. It's definitely A tier. Being able to scout people without the ability for them to fight back, a little cheese, but very, very useful. And if they know you have them, they can certainly do their best to counter you. Next up, we have the Elite Drone Operator. It's a pretty unique unit. It basically acts like a cruise missile launcher, but instead of cruise missiles, it launches drones. 3 types of drones. We got the recon drones, which are free to use. They expire after some time, but honestly, they're just a nice way to be able to scout around your main stack. Then, of course, we have the attack drones. They do a little bit of damage against infantry and hard targets, but if you have 5 or 10 of these drone operators, you can absolutely spam these drones and do a lot of damage if the enemy doesn't have air superiority fighters to protect them or good drone defense. Then, of course, we have the sabotage drones, which are fantastic against ships, especially cruisers and destroyers. You can take out airfields and stuff with them. They are very, very slow moving. Fighters can take them out very easily, but for the ill-prepared or AFK player, they can be incredibly useful. But yeah, these days I typically don't have spare cash in the mid game. In the late game, I certainly do, and that's because spy gameplay is still very important in this game. If you don't want to spend money on spies and you want to use them on drone operators or mercenaries, then yeah, they're going to be very, very useful, and you can end up firing a lot of drones using these. So I think I'm going to probably stick them with B tier just because they can counter a lot of different stuff. They're not the most powerful, and honestly, late game, there's no harm in having some drone operators. Alrighty, we're down to the last unit. This is the Elite Armored Fighting Vehicle, the Season 17 pickup. If you have Security Council and you get enough points playing Conflict of Nations World War III, aka Supremacy World War III. Now, this is a pretty fantastic unit. It's quite a bit more powerful than the standard amphibious fighting vehicle, though I will say it does not have the ability to scout or reveal stealth, which is why I really like the tech tree variant. So of course it's going to pair well with those and Marines, and when it does go into the water, instead of being a standard troop transport, these become elite naval transports. What this means is that it has some defense against ships and subs, so if you happen to bump into another naval transport, you're probably going to take it out just for free. And what's even more special is that at level 2 and 3, they get offensive anti-air. So they're not just going to be sitting ducks in the water. And while you should always have ship coverage for your troop transports, this is just extra protection, or if you're in a bind and you got to send them out to sea unprotected, at least they'll have a little bit of protection. And what's crazy about these elite troop transports is that they can actually fight and destroy patrol boats, which is kind of funny. I would say it's borderline OP, mainly because of its like crazy attack power. However, it doesn't, again, have the ability to scout or reveal stealth, so it does lose something for gaining these abilities. And of course, it does have the mobilization limit. But considering getting the elite troop transport when it's in the water, I think this is an S tier. I mean, if you get amphibious vehicles to scout, you get these for the attack power and for the elite naval transport, and you pair them with Marines, you're gonna have some killer stacks. So yeah, I think this is pretty accurate for my opinion on the units up to and including Season 17 in Supremacy World War III, aka Conflict of Nations World War III. So yeah, let me know in the comments below. I do read your comments, and yeah, thanks for sticking till the end. See ya.